Hello and welcome to another edition of Awe and Wonder. We are here for the Senior Showcase. We're really excited, as always, for this opportunity to look at a senior and what they've been through and just share in a great conversation. We have so many awesome seniors part of this class of 2021, so it's really great to have these conversations and share them with you. Today we have with us Xanthia Zoe, who is a senior. She was part of SGA. I had to write down a list because there's a lot of stuff here, a lot of good things. SGA Secretary and Vice President, Service Circle, English Honor Society, a couple of other honor societies that I'm forgetting already, English Adolescent Education Major and Speech Education Major. Xanthia was involved in one of our awesome mission trips for campus ministry. She's been super involved in various service efforts and keeping in the spirit of the conversations that you've heard before from our seniors. Xanthia is another person who I think has a really wonderful spirit of collaboration. You've heard me say that a lot. And that's a thread here that's not an accident. A lot of the people that we're choosing here to showcase and discuss are people who are just collaborators at heart and take on that type of leadership. And it's a really special gift that deserves to be talked about. So really excited here, and we'll bring her in. And there we go. Hey.
Hi.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Pretty cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So happy here. So you're graduating. Congratulations. How does it feel?
It feels a little bit surreal and great at the same time. You know, I'm a little bit nostalgic. Today's actually my last official day that I will be on campus. So
wow.
Yeah, it's definitely surreal thinking back to, my first day and my first encounter with St. Joe's, but I'm excited and looking forward to the new opportunities that present themselves. So.
Wow, so before we get into the new opportunities, but that's incredible. Let's time travel here. And what made you choose St. Joe's? How did you get involved at going to St. Joseph's College? What was that journey like?
So I have a little bit of an unconventional journey into college. Okay. So I was a very well-rounded student in high school, and I made connections with a lot of teachers, and that obviously carried through to college. And my favorite teacher, she actually went to St. Joe's for English education. And I was like, well, I guess I'll do that too. And I did the on-site admissions at my high school. And
what school was that?
I went to Smithtown East.
Okay.
Yeah. So I quite literally just did the on-site admission and said, okay. And then Dr. Fagan, who was the department chair of the English department, invited me to come observe a class. And I just fell in love with the atmosphere of the campus, with the people, the way the students interacted with each other, and obviously Dr. Fagan's teaching style. So all of those factors combined really, inspired me to choose St. Joe's. And honestly, I would have to say that everything at St. Joe's is very authentic. The people are authentic. The encounters you have are very authentic, and there's no, marketing, so to speak. I mean, obviously there is, because I see people I know on like the side of the bus as I'm driving, but
Well, that's another thing though, actually there is, but at the same time, it's not often that the actual marketing for the college has people that in it. A lot of times you use actors and models, which
right.
That's kind of the process. Everybody does that. But we actually have seen our own students.
Yeah, use the side of buses. And there's that authenticity piece that I was talking about. Yeah. It's just everything at St. Joe's is real, raw, how you're going to get it. And they're just so helpful and inspiring and want everyone to succeed, because I feel like sometimes in a big school, you get swept up into just the number, the statistic. But at St. Joe's, that is the farthest thing from the truth. So.
Yeah, it's super intimate, and I'm glad that you have the awareness of understanding why that makes St. Joe's really special. Because I agree, I graduated from St. Joseph's as well, and that energy of like seeing alumni and seeing that, and then you wanting to be a part of that is definitely part of my journey and some of my friends too. So that's cool to hear you say that. So you came to St. Joe's, you studied English adolescent. What exactly is your major?
So basically, I'm going to be an English teacher.
Okay.
So my official degree title is going to say English secondary or adolescent education. So adolescent education deals with the middle and high school demographic of students.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you'll be teaching like Lord of the Flies and Great Gatsby.
Yes, all the classics, so to speak, but they're trying to move away from the literary canon a little bit and
Yeah,
incorporate different, more inclusive texts, for lack of a better word. So,
sure.
and I'm currently student teaching, and actually tomorrow's my last day.
Oh,
But we just finished, like, we did The Outsiders, which is a classic that
yeah,
most people know and hear the name, or see Ralph Macchio and Rob Lowe and know what I'm talking about. But not
yeah,
everyone knows the story of Malala Yousafzai, and that was one of the books we read, I Am Malala.
yeah,
So they're really trying to be more inclusive and show different cultures, religions, races, genders. So
yeah.
it's not so much the literary canon anymore.
What was I love that I Am Malala. I love that book so much.
Yeah.
I was looking behind me because it's on the other bookshelf in the other part of the office.
Oh, okay.
Um, what were some of the literary canon or books for you when you were younger that were like what made you fall in love with the English word, the literature word?
So I was always a reader growing up. My mom would take me to the library every Monday, and I would pick out 150,000 books that, whether I could read them or not, who knew, but we, always encouraged me to try. So I grew up in a library. I grew up surrounded by books, and that definitely impacted my decisions. And I later turned to writing and really got fascinated with the whole process. And in first grade, I wrote a 32-page book about the time I hung out with my friend. Nothing, major, but a lot of work for a first grader to put
Yeah.
in. So, I had that piece always with me in my life. And then I think it was 10th grade, I read To Kill a Mockingbird. And I remember my teacher just saying the line, like the very famous Atticus Finch line, you don't really know a person until you get inside their shoes and walk around in them. I definitely butchered the actual way of saying it, but the general message, and some light bulb just went off. Like, I remember looking out the window and looking at our flagpole, because my classroom was right by the flagpole, and I just was like, wow, like, I really want to teach people that message. I think that message is so important because it's so true. You don't know someone and you don't know their situation until you actually get to know them and put yourself in their perspective and in their shoes. And that's definitely something that stuck with me. So after that, I started to see books as more of like a less of a form of entertainment and more of a form of sending a message and spreading awareness to something. And it really stuck with me and inspired me. And that's the piece that I want to take into my classroom. So yes, while teaching skills and getting students prepared for X, Y, and Z are important, I think that the piece that is missing from modern classrooms is the fact that they don't, spread the messages and awareness of what the author was trying to say. Because, Harper Lee or F. Scott Fitzgerald or Ernest Hemingway didn't write their books to have them be taught in a classroom and to take a test on them. They wrote them to spread a message and to, bring awareness to a situation or a problem or just anything in general. So I think that that's the piece that's missing from a lot of classrooms. So that's something that I plan to take into my classroom as a teacher.
That's amazing. And I really love that you have this memory of the flagpole. And it's funny because when I first met you, I don't remember what the context was, but you were involved in campus ministry a little bit and you went on one of the trips. And one of my observations of you, I have observations of everyone. I'm always very just curious about people and students because I think you're all very fascinating in your own wonderful way. But it's funny the answer you just gave because I remember meeting you thinking you were someone who really was curious about people because I remember you were like I felt like you were grilling me on all these really cool like you just were asking me questions and you're like what made you do this and why did you do this and then you went to like why do you like your job or what and I just remember having really fun interesting conversations where you were thoughtfully curious about not only me but other people around too but I just was like wow and so that answer you just gave there just kind of light bulb in my head of like, oh, I see it now.
Yeah, I'm definitely naturally inquisitive. I always have been.
That's awesome. That's a great thing to have, and I think it's something that not enough people tap into. Is that because we're so busy worrying about ourselves, and
Right.
if you can have the strength to really listen to other people and what they're going through, you're going to be so well off in your journey. That's so exciting. So, um, I want to talk about because we met through a couple of different service things, but then you went on one of the trips with campus ministry, and it was an awesome experience for me. I wish we could have more trips under our belt, but such is the way of the world. What have you done things like that before? Have you been involved in other like what else have you been involved in on campus? It doesn't have to just be campus ministry. I'm just kind of curious. What's your involvement?
So I'm definitely a natural leader. My mother raised me to be a strong,
Yeah.
independent woman. So that's definitely carried through. And I've always had a very big personality. So, I like to think that I'm destined to do big things.
Yeah.
So I like to get involved and sometimes overly involved in a lot of different things. I like to, have a lot of things lined up to experience and go through because I feel every different experience will lend something new that you learn.
Hmm.
So I was involved in student government. I was involved in quite a few honor societies, like you had mentioned. But I would say the biggest impact on my college life would be my time in student government because I was secretary and I was vice president. So I got to see two different roles and I really learned the ins and outs of St. Joe's in those 2 years. And it's made all the difference in the quality of my education, my interactions with others, how I carry myself. And so I really feel that that was a very big part of me and something that I do miss being involved in. But unfortunately, with student teaching and the pandemic and everything else that we can
Yeah.
use as reasons why we can't do something, it wasn't the right time to continue with it. And I
Right.
definitely absolutely left it in fabulous hands with Brianna and Alexandra.
Yeah. No, they've been doing amazing work, and I think it's cool that you were involved and you did such amazing things in that they are during, I mean, COVID has been insane, as we all know, and like, but they have been doing such a good job, and I think that's a testament to you as well. In that, and I always say this as a club advisor too, because I advise stars, and I always say if the club is working well, it's a machine that flows, and it's all about passing on torches, and it really it shouldn't have any moment that peaks too much. It should always be just kind of moving, and I think the way that things have been going this year is a testament to how well you have done with that and letting it flow and letting it keep going. Um,
Thank
that's really important because that's the college system. It's you're gonna graduate. Everybody's gonna. It's hard for us because we get so attached to you all.
you. Right.
And it's like bye. It's but it's also really exciting. I'm really happy and excited for you all. So you have a speech education minor as well, right?
It's speech communication, but kind
Oh,
of,
speech communication. Excuse me.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay.
No, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
What made you want to get that? Like, what is that part of it for you?
So, as an education major, we have to take a bunch of speech classes, and I don't want to say it was just to fulfill a requirement, but I only had two more classes I would need to have the minor, so that was a big part of it. But I
Yeah.
also did enjoy my interactions with the speech department. Specific professors come to my mind when I say that as well. They just made class interesting and fun, and I'm naturally very chatty, and I love to talk, and I love to get to know people, like you were saying. So
Mhm.
I think it was a good fit for me as a person. And it also did teach me about, presenting, prepared me for student teaching and being in front of the classroom. So there are a lot of added bonuses to that as well.
I love the way that you've approached your education and the way that you're sharing how you want to be in this field. And you said with the speech communication that it was a minor and you were kind of quote unquote fulfilling it. But I think that's a really cool thing because you accidentally took all the classes that you need to take, which you were already on this path, and then you just like had a light bulb moment of like, oh, I can get a minor. And I think that's so cool because that just shows that you're naturally in a place where you should be. Um, what so you we did the trip together. You got to go. You were in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
So what'd you think? How was your experience?
So I was going through an interesting phase in my life before that moment in time.
Okay.
And off of a whim, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to apply. It's something I've never done before. I want to be more involved in service. And that was really like a big thing that I wanted to accomplish during my time in college. So I saw the trip and I went, well, I'm going to try for it and see what happens. And I did my little interview with you and just really connected with you through Tom Petty and different conversations that we had. So that was a really great thing. And then I went on this trip, and the one person who I knew who was going on the trip unfortunately couldn't come anymore. So I was like, oh, well, now I'm all alone. I don't know these people. And I was like, but you know what? I got it. I'm chatty. I'll make a friend somehow. And I wound up meeting two people who I really just connected with. And throughout the whole trip, we worked really hard together and just formed such a close bond. And I still like regularly, almost every single day, communicate with one of those people. So it had a really big impact on me in my relationships. It had a really big impact on me spiritually and mentally. And when I say spiritually, I don't necessarily mean religiously, just as in myself as a human being. So I take things, differently now since seeing the impact we had on the community in New Orleans and just the different people we interacted with and the way of their culture. And I actually decided that I wanted to apply to a teaching job down there at some point just to see if I would, get it, if I would get on the interview process or something along those lines, because I fell in love with the city and the people and just the atmosphere. They have been through such tragedies and continue to face such hardships, but, like through the spirit of the Mardi Gras, they, in a sense, just, project this pride and value of their culture and what they believe in and just not just having fun, but having fun. So it was really inspiring to see the different people. I especially loved when we went to Miss Gloria's garden and got to see her project and just the impact it had on the community. And every single service thing and component we did throughout that trip was meaningful. But, I think each new piece brought different connections to each of us and touched each of us on that trip in a different way. But I would have to say the most meaningful part of the trip was connecting with the group itself who went together, because not knowing anybody and then spending a week with them can be tough sometimes because you don't know how the different personalities are going to blend. But I think we did a really great job and we have a lot of fun memories, and I plan to communicate with the people who I still am in contact with for hopefully the rest of my life, but for the foreseeable future. So it definitely has had an impact on me as a person, and I'm really truly grateful to have had that experience, because I have to say that my college experience would definitely be missing something if I wasn't on that trip. And it was right before the pandemic too. So
It was
that
right
was
before.
a crazy, crazy time. And just the opportunity we had to do that and how it worked so well and just flowed seamlessly almost was truly amazing. So I'm really grateful that you were able to put that together. And I'm not just trying to, boost your ego here.
So to give you some of the behind the scenes on how it works. First of all, it's very funny that you were going with a friend and the person could. I feel like that there's always a story like that in all the trips, and it's kind of like a beautiful accident. I mean, I always hate whenever someone isn't able to make it because you put the team together and you're excited, but it happens and it's life. But it always ends up being there's always someone who's like, I don't know anybody, and like they end up having this amazing experience. But behind the scenes of it a bit, actually, that trip was really all of Chris.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And what was it's so funny. I mean, obviously, I don't believe in coincidences because my faith doesn't let me believe in them, right? Everything happens for a reason. And that trip was such a perfect example of how those kinds of trips should flow and work. And everything was just, that the group got along almost too well. Like I was like, what's going on here? Everyone just was so super generous and kind. And for that to be the last one before the pandemic was like, really been reflecting on that a lot. But yeah, that was Chris Smalls, his idea, and he really championed that and put a lot of that together.
Absolutely.
And which was so cool. And it was really special because if it wasn't for him, that wasn't on my radar as a place to go. And he was like, hey, and I was, oh, all right. Yeah, that's cool. And it just was such a beautiful experience.
Right. Like you said, everything happens for a reason. So I definitely think that he was meant to have that moment. And I think it really made him feel good as well, because I had conversations with him about it. So I think it was very powerful in his life too at the time. So
yeah, it's cool. It's cool that stuff happens. And I'm glad that we were able to have that moment too, and that you were able to experience that, because everything that you're saying about the trip, but then like anything in general that I think this college does, even outside of campus ministry, I think is built on those community experiences that are so special.
absolutely.
Because I always say too, like even when we're doing service, like the service work is good and all, and it matters, really does. But it's the community experiences that happen within the work that ends up being the long lasting bridge to new opportunities, to greater things. And so for whenever the students and yourself can realize that, um, that makes me really happy and excited, because that's really where the victories come. I mean, sure, you can build a house, you can donate money, you can do all that stuff. That stuff is great, but it's those connections that happen in the process that really are life changing.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Just to completely sidetrack off of the gentle niceness, because I'm a crazy person and I love to have wild conversations. I know
Right.
you love to read. I know you were one of the many conversations we had was about reading and music and all that jazz. Pandemic was crazy. How many books did you read? Did you got what do you got? Like what's
I
going on?
I don't know if I have a specific count, but I definitely spent a lot of my time reading because naturally I just love to read, and I feel like every book you can get something from, like I was touching upon earlier.
Mhm.
I would have to say, though, most recently, the book that I have been reading is called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
Oh
It was
yeah.
highly recommended. I don't want to say the word pushed because that's harsh, but it was highly recommended by my very, very close friend who actually went on the trip with us. So, that's where that connection formed.
Cool.
And they basically were like, you know what? Like, you have to read this book. Like, you need to do it. You need this in your life right now. Go for it. And at first
Mhm.
I was like, I don't know, because it touches upon some very deep personal things that people don't like to elaborate on.
Yeah.
And I started reading and I started listening to Brene Brown's I think it was a TED Talk. Yeah, it was her
Yeah.
TED Talk and her Netflix documentary. And I was like, this is what I need to hear right now, right here in this moment. This is exactly what I need. And I hate to say, like, oh, books changed my life, but I feel like every time I read a book similar to this book, I am like, oh, this changed my life. It changed my
Yeah.
mindset. And it really, truly did. And it has changed my perspective and the way I approach conversations and interactions with people.
Mhm.
So I don't want to say, wow, I owe this all to a book, but in a sense, I do.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're crazy at all in the way that you're saying this. And I think it makes so much sense in that it's you meeting the book, the book,
Yes, I love that you said that.
it's the relationship at that time. And I think that's so true of writing and all different art forms. But, um, and Brene Brown's awesome. And it's funny because I've obviously heard I haven't read everything, but I've watched the TED Talk and things. And I'm always curious because I come at things from a campus ministry perspective and more of a religious perspective. But I'm always really excited to see people like her who I think are ministers in their own right and
I
like
love
are
that.
doing ministry in, and so I'm always very because like there's for me like there's certain people that I know how to deliver the mic drops for me, like
Right.
I know who they are, the Father Franks of the world. They're my people, like they're great. But then every now and then you find someone who's kind of speaking a different way, and you're like, "Oh, that's interesting." Brene Brown's one of them. That's really
Yes, she definitely speaks more my language, for lack of a
yeah,
better word. She's very direct and upfront,
yeah,
and that oftentimes scares people, but that entices me and makes me want to keep reading or keep listening or keep watching whatever form of
yeah.
communication I'm quote unquote having with this person. So I love the way she is just so direct with what she has to say. I like to think of myself as a very direct person, and I
Mhm.
think sometimes being direct gets a negative connotation attached to it. But
Right.
I disagree because I am direct. But I disagree
It's a
because
very direct answer.
direct, like direct conversations or negative conversations. So I'm a firm believer of sometimes you need to hear what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And I'm
Mhm.
definitely the type of person that people come to when they need to hear something, not when they want to, because I don't really tell people what they want to hear. So
Mhm.
Brene Brown and people like Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which is
Oh,
like my all-time
oh,
favorite book on the entire planet.
so I like her a lot too, but not for that book. Let me see, is it here?
Is it Big Magic?
No, the last American, the last American man.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. I've never read it though.
Yeah, it's
Like
it's wild. It's like Into the Wild in a sense, but
I love that book too.
yeah, it's like that in a sense, but not a tragedy, obviously. But anyway, no. So I like her a lot too. She's really
Yeah.
good, and she writes a lot of. smaller pieces too.
Yeah.
That's cool that you bring her up, because that kind of brings me to another question I have. Because you said before about how books can change your life, and I totally agree. Do you find, this has been my experience, so I don't know about if you agree, but do you find that books or certain types of books that are not like Brene Brown style can like surprisingly change your life too? Like you maybe find yourself reading something that's like a totally different genre, has nothing like, is not even close to something that you would normally read, but you're like, whoa, this is having an impact on me. And yeah, I don't know. I've been having that. I'm reading a novel right now that I would never normally touch, and it's been kind of profound.
So I 100% absolutely agree. And, like I was saying earlier, I think every book carries a message because that's the author's intention. They don't write for it to be taught, they write for the message to be delivered. So I definitely agree with you on that 100%. I've read books that normally I'm like, oh, like I don't find this interesting. Like this is not something I would want to talk about. This is not something I would want to know about. But then you get into it and you're like, this person has a really great point. Let me keep reading. And then you're really engaged and interacting with the text. And I find myself kind of being like, no, I wouldn't do it that way. Or, oh, wow, that's a really great point. Like maybe I should do things that way. So I think that you should never turn a person or a book or anything for that matter away just based on like a first glance. They always say, oh, never judge a book by its cover. And such a cliche thing to say, but it's true. I think that, it brings me back to that Atticus Finch quote, you really don't know a person until you step inside their shoes and walk around in them. So to me, that is definitely something that could be very true. That aspect of a book that maybe you would never read could really touch you in a way. And even if it's a book for a class, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I've, read and interacted with some books or textbooks, and there's maybe just one line that I'm like, wow, that's a really important thing. And I'm going to carry that with me now and just kind of put it in like my little academic tool belt, as I like to call it, and pull it out when I need to. So I think there's something to be said that every interaction you have, whether it's with an inanimate object or not, or a person, you really can learn something from. So it's important to not only be a good speaker and a good leader, but a good listener. And that's definitely something I've learned at my time at St. Joe's too, is the aspect and the art of listening. I think that's sometimes what we as human beings lack. Yeah. So to me, that's really important, is also the art of listening, not just speaking.
Totally. Our mutual friend and overall awesome person, Hugo, always says, you got 2 ears for a reason.
Yes.
I think about that a lot. That's really powerful you say that.
I 100% agree.
This is awesome. So you're going to graduate here in about a month, and it's so exciting. And like I said before, we all as a collective are so proud of you all and excited. We're really going to miss the heck out of you, especially because we feel like we haven't gotten to see you all as much this year.
I know.
But what's next for you? I know it's a big question and no pressure at all, but what do you see are some of the things that are on your calendar, so to speak, coming up?
So most recently, or the most up and coming event is that I started a preschool in the fall, and then I had to stop because of student teaching, but I'm actually going back. And the preschool really changed my life because I was never really like a little kid person. And then I got to the preschool and I got to be a little kid again. And there's that, idea of like the inner child that a lot of books or people talk about. And I never really understood it until I actually was in the situation. And it just changed my whole view and perspective on everything. And that group of 12 4-year-olds, like, completely turned my life upside down in the best ways possible, and have taught me so much about myself and as a teacher and just as a leader in general. So to see that through and to be able to see them graduate to kindergarten is like so touching and so powerful to me, that I get to kind of full circle moment with my teaching experience this year. So that's the first on the agenda. And then I've been just, looking into jobs around Long Island. I'm actually looking into jobs in Hawaii for teaching. And like I said, Louisiana, because I don't know if I necessarily want to stay on Long Island. I definitely want to be traveling and out there and experiencing the world. So I think, we learned that about each other from the New Orleans trip, that seeing the world is so important, and seeing what different places have to offer, because I've been here my whole life and I'm so grateful to have grown up in such a nice community with great people, and I had an amazing experience in my school district, and then amazing experience at St. Joe's. So I've been so fortunate and lucky, and I'm so grateful to have had all these opportunities. But now I'm at the point where I want to forge new opportunities for myself. And I think that oftentimes young people, quote unquote,
Sure.
Don't realize that, they've been through all these experiences, and then when they graduate college, they're like, oh, well, I still have to stay in the same spot because it's all I know, it's all I'm comfortable with.
Right.
And if there's anything I have learned from my 4 years at St. Joe's, is that being comfortable isn't always the answer. Sometimes you need to step into that uncomfortable position and take a risk. And I think now, especially that we don't have as much collateral, for lack of a better word, is the time to do it. So I encourage anyone who might be listening who is either younger than me or of the same age or even a couple of years older to take that risk, because now's the time. Living in your 20s in a pandemic is difficult as it is. But if we learned anything, I think, from this pandemic, is that nothing is permanent. Nothing is always going to be stable, and you can't control outcomes of things, clearly. So I think it's important to take that risk and be brave and be courageous and dare greatly, as Brene Brown would say, and venture into that new experience that you want to have and that you see yourself having, and make those dreams that you've been thinking about your whole life into a reality for yourself. And if you believe in yourself, that's half the battle. And the rest, I believe, will just kind of fall through if it's meant to be for you. And I'm not saying that you won't fall down a couple times, because failure is ultimately inevitable, something else that Brene Brown speaks about. But failure is ultimately inevitable, but it doesn't have to be your permanent situation. So I think, take that risk, take that chance. And as cliche as that sounds, go for it. Just quite literally go for it and do what sets your soul on fire. Because if you stay in one spot, you're never going to know, and you're always going to have that what if mentality. And I think instead of saying, what if I took this chance, or what if it's, what if I believe in myself, and what if I take that step that I need to try something new? And you just, what if it works out? That's the question that we don't ask ourselves enough, is what if it works out? So
can you every now and then just come into my office and just like give me a speech over my shoulder when I have to do paperwork that isn't like dealing with students, and I'm like, oh, I gotta just be like, you do this, you got it, because like I'm getting pumped up. And it's really, again, going back to the intro here, everybody that's been a guest on this series here has had a spirit of collaboration and an energy that's contagious, whether it's joy or education or just excitement or whatnot. And it, like right now, I'm feeling it. I really appreciate it, and I'm feeling it. And I'm happy to hear that you're making the most of everything that's in front of you. It's exactly what we literally pray for all of our students to have in their life. So we're rooting you on. We can't wait to see what you do next. And
thank you.
And hey, home is always here too.
I 100% agree.
Home is always here for you.
Yeah, I'm of that same mindset. Home is where your heart is, and my heart will definitely always be with St. Joseph's in some capacity. I've had some amazing interactions with faculty, staff, students. So I think that making the decision to come to St. Joe's 4 years ago is something that I still will carry with me for the rest of my life, because it really has made an impact on me as a person. I'm just so grateful to have had the opportunity to attend such a welcoming, warming, loving college. And, not everyone gets to say that about their school, but I really, truly mean it from the bottom of my heart, that the experiences I had, are just one of a kind. And they've really shaped me into the person that I am, and the person that I'm becoming, and the person that I will be. So, I definitely appreciate everything and all the hard work and effort that everyone puts into everything. And especially right now, school in general is not easy. I'm on the other side of it for the first time in my life, leading a classroom, and it's not easy there, but I could not imagine, running a college or running a department or any of the above. And I saw how hard everyone would work, especially, not to call out the student life office, but just because I worked so closely with them for 2 years, I really got to know them on a more intimate and vulnerable level. So, I saw how hard they worked then. I could only imagine what it's like now. So, I think that we all need to take a collective moment and say thank you to the people in the student life office, especially us graduating seniors, because if it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't have, what we have for graduation. So I am very grateful for all of the opportunities and interactions I've had with everyone here at St. Joe's. So,
very sweet of you. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Awe and Wonder for our senior showcase. That conversation was simply awesome. I don't know if it was the coffee or the energy of Xanthia, but I'm fired up, and I hope you are too. That energy is exactly what we hope and pray for in all of our students. And I hope that you can feel that joy and that you can take that with you into your day, week, going forward. And I haven't said this before, but I'll say it again, especially invite you to, as you're listening, to hold these students in your thoughts and in your prayers as they go on to these journeys, because they're all bringing such awesome things to the table, and wish them the best of luck as they go forth and touch more lives. So God bless. Talk to you all soon, and have a great day.